Hello, geometry students. Welcome to a lesson on triangles. Now, I told you before that I was going to ruin triangles for you when we had a lesson on the median of a triangle and how the medians intersect and they come together at the centroid. And it was going to be this really complicated thing. Well, guess what? We are back to make triangles even more complicated. And I'm telling you, even more complicated because this lesson has it all. We are going to be using the midpoint theorem. We are going to be using some other proportional relationships we're going to be developing, and you're going to use the concepts of the slopes of perpendicular and parallel lines. This lesson has it all: intrigue, romance, action. So I hope that you are ready and strapped in because we are going to get started. One thing we're going to do is we're going to be using GeoGebra as a tool instead of using a compass and a straight edge. And I just want to make a comment about that. You can, if you want to, when you're instructed to use a compass and straight edge, use GeoGebra instead. Compass and straight edge is definitely the correct Euclidean way to do things. However, there is a lot of value in also understanding new technological methods for doing things. Because if you can use GeoGebra, you can verify immediately the sizes of angles, the sizes of segments. You can drag things around and test hypotheses by changing the shapes of your figures. It's really a neat tool. So because there's value in that tool as well, instead of using a compass and a straight edge, we're going to use GeoGebra to do one of our activities today. And I would let you do the same thing, at least periodically. All right, so we need to define a few things before we are talking about a triangle. But actually, before we do this, let's go back and review what we learned about triangle parts already. If you remember, we found this segment of a triangle called the median. The median started at a vertex and ended at the midpoint of the opposite side. And we found that all three medians intersect at a concurrent point. That means it's intersected by all three lines. And we called that point the centroid, which was the center of gravity of a triangle. Very useful point, different from what we're doing today. We also dropped lines from each vertex so that those lines were perpendicular to the line containing the opposite side of the triangle. And then all three of those lines would intersect at a point called the orthocenter. And we didn't do anything with the orthocenter other than acknowledge its existence and that it can be inside or outside of a triangle. Well, we are back, baby. And we are doing the same sort of thing, except this time we're going to be looking at different segments we can draw in a triangle to explore different relationships. And that first kind of segment is going to be an angle bisector. We're going to be drawing a segment that divides an angle into two congruent angles, and we're going to do that for each of the angles in our triangle. Those three angle bisectors are, believe it or not, going to intersect at a single point, a concurrent point. And we call that point the incenter of a triangle. And there's something important that you need to know about the incenter. That's that point of concurrency where all three angle bisectors intersect. The incenter is neat because it's equidistant from the three sides of the triangle. Now, you'll hear that. What does it mean to be equidistant to a segment? Well, what this means is it's equidistant to the closest point on all three sides of the triangle. That's a characteristic of the incenter. But we have another important term. This one, instead of relating to the angle bisector, which cuts each angle at the three vertices into two congruent angles, instead of talking about that, we're going to talk about a perpendicular bisector. Perpendicular bisector divides a line segment into two congruent segments and is perpendicular to the segment. Hey, what if we drew a perpendicular bisector for each side of our triangle? The first thing we'd find is, unlike any of the other things we talked about before, they wouldn't pass through the vertices necessarily. I mean, if you just have any random shaped triangle, your perpendicular bisector is very unlikely to pass through the vertices. But an interesting thing is that the perpendicular bisector does, when you draw all three of them, intersect concurrently, just like the other types of segments you can draw in a triangle. And we call that point of concurrency the circumcenter of the triangle. And an interesting characteristic of the circumcenter is that it's equidistant from all three vertices. Now, here's the thing I need you to know. Sometimes in geometry, we talk about circumscribing a polygon. When we circumscribe a polygon, we draw a circle around the polygon so that all of the vertices of the polygon rest somewhere on the circle. And when we do that, if you think about that, remember, what is a circle? A circle is the set of all points that are equidistant from the center of the circle. And if all of the points of a polygon rest on a circle, that means that we can identify the point at the center of the circle. And that point at the center of the circle is going to be equidistant from all the vertices because the vertices all lie on the circle, and all points on the circle are the same distance away from the center. So that's what's interesting about the circumcenter, or a circumscribed figure. Now here's another interesting thing you should know. All triangles can be circumscribed. You can draw a circle such that all of for any triangle, you can find at least one circle that all three of the vertices lie somewhere on the circle. You could do the same thing for any rectangle as well. And then any other regular polygon can be circumscribed. And then there's other polygons that can be circumscribed but aren't guaranteed to be circumscribable, like triangles and rectangles are. All right, here's a picture, by the way, of an in-center. Notice that my three segments look like they're splitting each angle into two congruent angles, and here's my point of concurrence. Here's a picture of the circumcenter. Notice I can draw a circle that has all three vertices on it, and then the circumcenter is just at the center of the circle. This point is equidistant from T, R, and S. All right. One other thing we need to talk about is theorem 38.1, the triangle bisector theorem. If a line bisects an angle of a triangle, then we get all of these interesting proportional relationships. Let's just take a look at which ones are proportional. It says PM is proportional to PO as NM relates to NO. So what does PM and NM have in common? Notice that they're both hypotenuses of angles, of triangles. And then if I look at this, because this angle here is being bisected, and this angle up here is the same, and then especially because I know that this is a right triangle here. Let's see, if a line bisects an angle of a triangle, then it divides the opposite side proportionally to the other side of the triangles. So congruency actually doesn't matter here. What does matter is that I'm bisecting this angle. So this angle has to equal this angle for it to be true. And then I know that this side, PM, is related to NM as PO is related to NO. So it's important for you to keep that proportion in mind. All right, in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to use GeoGebra, and we are going to actually draw some of these centers, these special centers of triangles.